Ladies and gentlemen, the show we've all been waiting for, Paranormal Buzz Radio is proud to present REP Paranormal and Friends with your hosts, Kim Purvis and Allison Robinson. Live every Thursday night on Spreaker, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central, 5 Pacific. Be sure to check out their Facebook page, REP Paranormal Busters.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast by the host or the guest do not necessarily reflect the views of Paranormal Buzz Radio or its sponsors. Use of any material produced by Paranormal Buzz Radio without express written consent is strictly prohibited. For information on everything Paranormal Buzz Radio has to offer, visit our website, paranormalbuzzradio.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome everybody to another night of REP Paranormal and Friends. We have a special guest tonight, which I've been kind of fangirling about, honestly. We have Michelle Belanger on tonight, so thank you for coming on the show.
Well, I've been looking forward to it.
I'm super excited about it. Excuse me. So, a few things about you. You're an occult expert. Media, you've been on TV, you've been on Portals to Hell, you've been on Paranormal State, you were on the Salem Live, psychic, author, singing. I saw you singing on one of your posts on Twitter not too long ago.
Yeah, I did a little bit of Dona Nobis Pacem because, well, you know, we kind of need it right now.
Yes, yep. No, there's like, you do like everything. Like, what do you not do?
I do not do taxes. Someone else does the taxes for me because the math is terrible.
I'm terrible at math. I don't do my own taxes either. I pay somebody to do that for me. But anyways, why don't you go ahead and just tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into all of this?
Oh, let's see. Well, I was raised in a family where psychic stuff was pretty normal. Half the family was Irish Catholic and the other half is French Canadian, Acadian French particularly, and both sides on my grandfather's side and my grandmother's side have talents. So when I had experiences as a kid, like, it wasn't weird and I wasn't discouraged from talking about it. Like, instead I was actually encouraged to read, to study, to understand it a little bit better, which definitely appealed to me because I'm the kind of person, like, you know, everybody has different pathways to knowledge and understanding. Some people listen and learn better that way. I'm a reader, and I've always been a reader. Mm-hmm. So it kind of naturally led to me both being someone who experiences things, but also someone who writes about it. I don't know, in college, I ended up going into psychology and comparative religious studies. My concentration is in psychology of religion, along with all the religious studies stuff. So at this point, as a writer, like, my first professional, like, paid publication was in 1989. So I've been doing that for a while. And college is where I started sort of unofficially doing psychic investigation and paranormal investigation, basically because everybody knew I was the weird person who, if they had something rattling around in their closet or they weren't sure what was going on in the dorm, like, I was the person to ask.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, I mean, you've, I don't know how you find time. You've written like over 30 books.
I don't know how to not. Like, I don't really know.
I mean, that is just amazing. Like, to be able to write that many. And then don't you have like, is it the 10th anniversary of the, yeah.
Oh, so yeah, the Dictionary of Demons, which yes. I wrote mostly in 2009 and it was published in 2010. I managed to hit the sweet spot with the publishers. I've missed 10th anniversary and 20th anniversaries with books like a billion times. And over the summer, I was like, oh, hey, Llewellyn, I think it's like going to be the 10th anniversary next year. Do you think we could do like a special thing for it? And I'll be honest, the one thing I have wanted to do with any of my books is to get a hardback copy.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like I came of age in like the late 70s and early 80s. So like, you know, it was an official book. If it was a hardback.
Mm-hmm. So
I ran the idea past them, pitched how I wanted to expand it and change it. And so we're going to do this fantastic, like, expanded, revised, hardback copy. They did this amazing cover. It's going to have, like, red foil lettering and just, you know, kind of pull out all the stops. And I got to put in tons more information. Initially when the Dictionary of Demons came out, like, it's a very heavily researched piece, but it was really, really long. So I took 40,000 words, which is pretty much another book, out of it to make it like the limit of what they had set for it. I got to put that all back in and then some. So it's really excited. It's going to be one of those books that like you either leave on your coffee table, you use as a doorstop, you put it in your you put it in your bag if you really want, like, you know, something to protect yourself when you're walking out of the dark. Yeah.
Where are people going to be able to find that edition?
Pretty much everywhere books are sold. Obviously, on Amazon, I am told that Llewellyn Publications will have pre-order links live on their website as of next month.
Oh, okay.
It won't be coming out until September because there's a whole bunch of stuff that they have to do. Like, traditional publishing tends to be a fairly slow process.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh my gosh.
I'm especially excited because one of the things I really enjoyed that Llewellyn worked with me on was making sure that it was a very highly illustrated work. You know, some of that is trying to track down historic pieces that are appropriate to the subject matter. And the Wellcome Library in London has made most of their collection digital and freely available. And they were fantastic with letting me use all of like their old stuff from the 15th, 16th century. So there's like all these new woodcuts and engravings and just really, really cool things. A couple of pages from grimoires that they own in their collection that I was able to reproduce. So really exciting stuff.
Oh, that's going to be awesome.
I can't wait.
Oh my gosh, I love that kind of stuff. We do have a question in chat already from Darren.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to know what your favorite location is that you've been on.
Oh, favorite, like, in terms of just the enjoyable, I mean, some of the hauntings aren't enjoyable, but in terms of, like,
however you want to interpret it.
Well, for the most haunted, and I don't recommend beginners go, it would be Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, which I went to with Portals to Hell.
Oh, yeah.
That place was, whoa. And then I'm not saying that's favorite because it was, ooh, fun, spooky. That was, oh, crap. Okay, there's stuff going down.
Yeah.
But for favorite, I guess maybe because it's local to me, Mansfield Reformatory. Like many things about it, the people who own the place and run the place, the way that they'll work with guests, the way they maintain the place, the fact that you will almost always have some sort of an experience there, but it's not so terrible that you can't go there as a beginner and have an experience. So yeah, probably Mansfield, and a close second to that is another local one that is not on many people's radar because they only open their doors for ghost investigation like once or twice a year, and that is the Lake County Historical Society. It used to be the poorhouse, and they only do ghost hunts as fundraisers to maintain the location. Oh, and I'm oh crap, Madison Seminary. I totally. There's so many cool places, but again. And I'm biased here because one of my top students is one of the people who owns and runs Madison with her partner, and it is another place. It's in Madison, Ohio, right on Lake Erie. It was initially founded as a seminary, not in the sense of like nuns and priests or anything. At the time that it was built, a seminary was a place where people just taught. So it was a school. It was repurposed as an asylum, as a poorhouse. It's gone through a whole bunch of different things, and it is another like big, vast, sprawling old location that definitely has activity. And the benefit of the people who own it care about it. Like, they're not just trotting it out as a haunted location and, taking everybody's tickets and just, thank you.
Right.
They put the money back into the space. They really, really care about the space. They do a lot of work to not just refurbish that place, but to help raise awareness of the history and like a whole lot of historical renovation. So I guess my big answer is, for me, a haunted location, especially one that's accessible to the public, has this combination of definitely haunted, but also kept well by the people who own it in a way that isn't predatory either to the living people who are coming to experience things there, or predatory to any of the intelligent hauntings that are still in the location.
We've got some more questions coming in here. One thing, though, before we move away from that book, I just popped into my head. Are you going to have any, like, autographed ones for sale of that book?
I've never had a special limited edition before with Llewellyn, so I'm not sure, like, what the author copy stuff is going to be like. But if it is feasible, I will be selling them off of my site and selling autographed copies. And if it ends up not being the case, I will probably have special book plates commissioned that I'll sign and I can send out for people's copies.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Very
Cool.
Nice. Oh, let's see here. Got to scroll through here. We've got quite a few questions here rolling.
I got a question before.
Oh, okay.
while
Yes,
she's
we'll let
scrolling.
Kim do it. She's like, give
Ask
me a
away.
second.
When I first saw you, you were on Paranormal Estate. Why do they always blindfold you to go in?
So that was the first time they did that. It was just somebody's experiment. I don't know who on the production company thought it would be neat. They wanted to do it both with me and with Chip. So Chip and I, in different episodes, they said, "Hey, how about blindfolded?" Now, Chip wasn't a big fan of the blindfold because he works differently with stuff. But for me, I actually found it incredibly liberating. So I've always tread this place in my head of, am I being psychic with these perceptions, or am I just being Sherlock Holmes and being incredibly perceptive about the location? And the blindfold helped me navigate that line a lot better. It ruled out any kind of even unconscious front loading by like walking into a room and seeing people's photographs on the walls, or even like the state of disrepair. There's so many pieces of information that we don't realize we are taking in from our environments. So with Paranormal State, like they really only wanted to do the blindfold for that one time as an experiment, and I liked it so much that I asked them to keep it. I still have that old.
And I didn't know why.
Yeah, it helps.
That's understandable.
Yeah.
Think of it also like you block out one sense and other senses become a lot more keen, and that definitely is the case. Like if I take away my physical eyes, my other eyes are much more focused.
Okay. Rolling, because we have a lot of people in chat here. Okay.
You got another
Hello,
question?
people in chat.
Yep, we have quite a few tonight. We have, a lot of new listeners too, it looks like, tonight. Let's see here. Darren, again, has a couple questions for you. This one, it says, what's your favorite occult you have dealt with?
Aspect of the occult or like occult group?
Maybe he's thinking occult group?
Yeah, I mean, well, it gives me the opportunity to like make the disambiguation between cult and occult.
Yes.
Yeah, the word occult actually means hidden or secret, and it's sort of a blanket term for everything sort of weird. Technically, the paranormal falls under the occult. We don't think of it that way anymore. And then there's cults, which are, we've got the negative sense of a small religious sect that is probably abusing followers one way or another. Although technically, the term is just a tiny religion. My favorite aspect of the occult, probably 19th century occult. There was a revival in London in the late 1800s, right around the same time of the Jack the Ripper murders. And so like 1889 and onwards, there was a group that founded an organization called the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. And their occult practices, the translations that they engaged in, and all the other stuff that they were doing really had a huge impact on not just occultism in the 20th century, but also spiritualism, the New Age movement, the modern magical movement, and to some extent also the paranormal community and paranormal investigation. So learning a little bit about like their history and context, what they were doing, who was involved, which it's a list that would really surprise you. Bram Stoker, Oscar Wilde's wife, Constance Wilde, actress Florence Farr, W.B. Yeats, the poet who he's one of the most often quoted when you're talking about like apocalyptic poetry. He's the guy who wrote "Turning and Turning in the Widening Gyre," "The Falcon," or "The Falconer," "Things Fall Apart," "The Center Cannot."
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to think of who all else in there. Like they were just. Aleister Crowley was part of it for a little while. He got kicked out. He was a little rambunctious. William Westcott and let me see, the coroner, a whole bunch of Freemasons. Like it was a fascinating group, fascinating people, and this sort of like exchange of ideas. So I love studying that time period and everything that it kind of gave us where we're at now. If I seem distracted, my cat Bliss has decided that now must be playtime, so I am also...
That's fine. Not a
swinging
problem.
a little toy bat on a string around.
I like seeing all your little kitty pictures I see on Twitter every now and then. All right, let's see here. Darren he's on a roll tonight. He's got quite a few questions here for you, so we'll get through some of those. Let's see here. He would like to know, what's your favorite device of choice at this present time?
I mean, I can tell you, I'm not a fan of either the GeoPort or the Ghost Box stuff. Like that just, for some reason, and I think maybe because I'm like really sensitive to auditory stuff, like that distracts me more even when it seems to work. I'm kind of old school. Like I started off initially reading stuff on paranormal investigation written by like Harry Price and Hans Holzer. So dowsing rods and pendulums and things like that, even though they are highly suspect because how easily they are influenced by ideomotor response. I've seen some pretty good results with people using K2 meters. You'll see me not use a whole lot of tech, a lot of like electronic-based tech. And that's because of a personal quirk. Do not tend to last around me, regardless of hauntings. It was something that became a running joke on Paranormal State. Like, I would go through 3 times as many batteries on my mic pack as anybody else. And I'd say I don't think it's unique to me. Lloyd Auerbach, one of the few folks who has a degree in parapsychology currently, has written pretty extensively on the phenomenon of psychic folk and energy workers just having this effect on electronics around them. Batteries in watches don't stay. Watches won't run well on them. There's definitely yeah. So I try to avoid using the tech because it is very likely to not work right for me.
That is a good point. That is a very good point. Oh, let's see here. He had another one.
Yeah. Have you tried the Estes Method yet? It's one of his questions.
And I'm curious too, because I really like what they're doing on Hellier, and that was my introduction to the Estes Method. I feel a little bit bad that I didn't keep up a little bit more on it, because like what Carl Pfeiffer and them were doing at the Stanley Hotel looks to be really, really interesting.
Yeah.
And I like what the Estes Method is meant to accomplish. And I honestly think that we can apply that same concept to an awful lot of things. Even say for a Ouija board, for example, or pendulum, or dowsing rods. I mentioned ideomotor response, which is the unconscious movements that the person holding the device is making happen, even though they don't realize they're doing it. If you apply the idea of the Estes Method and blindfold that person, but still have them using the device, I would be very curious to see how it would change and how it would increase accuracy.
Yeah. That is
We might have to try that.
Yeah, we might have to try that out and see what happens. Never thought of that. I really actually never thought of that. But yeah, that is a very good point.
I mean, it rules out, being accidentally skewed by your expectations, by your unconscious responses. I think that there's a lot to be said for that, and it may help with anybody who would be skeptical that people are faking. Because it removes a lot of the temptation, as well as just accidental influence from our hopes, fears, expectations, which are all of us come into these things with.
Right. Let's see here. Oh, here's another one. If you come across a full body apparition, who would you want it to be, and what would you say?
I mean, I've seen a full-bodied apparition, and it's probably the first ghost experience I had. She didn't talk, though. She was... What was her name? I researched later. I learned Rebecca, I think. I grew up in a town that had a haunted library, and when I was in the neighborhood of 4, I went into a part of the library where they were doing repairs, and I saw this woman standing there, and she had all this dark hair kind of piled up on top of her head, and she had this dress that looked to me to be white with like little blue flowers on it, and it had these big poofy sleeves and like very tight fitting forearm bits with tiny little buttons and all these tiny buttons down the back. And so like I saw her with a great deal of clarity. She was standing at the window, and she turned and looked at me, and that was the most communication we got. Like there was, if I'd had the word for melancholy at the time, I would. That's how she looked. Years later, in like researching the experience, she was the sister of the school teacher in the town, and she had died an old maid at like I think 28.
Oh wow! Wow.
Yeah, I know, right?
Why? An old maid at 28.
Yeah.
Wow. That's just...
Considering I turned 47 on the 11th of this month, yeah. So
yes, yeah. I know. Kim said,
"Yeah, I got that written down to wish you a happy birthday."
Yeah. Let's see. Oh my goodness, there's a lot of questions here.
While she's looking up the questions, what's your views on destroying a haunted item?
It depends on the item. I'm more inclined to bind it and bury it than I am to do something like burn it or to shatter it. Particularly because there's, depending on depending on how the thing became attached to the item, shattering that item may only release the spirit, and burning it may do the same. So I'd want to assess the object and its history, and there's different ways to try to deal with what might be attached.
Right.
And again, it depends on if it's a negative haunting or not, because sometimes it's, great grandma is really attached to that wedding ring that's gotten passed down from generation to generation, and you wouldn't necessarily want to go, kicking her off of her favorite ring.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Oh, let's see here. Okay. What are your views on exorcisms?
Complicated. One, I think, well, it depends on if we're talking like strict Catholic traditional exorcism or just casting spirits out. I think that it's something that someone shouldn't attempt to do without a certain amount of training and background. It's not something that you casually go into. Mm-hmm. I think that people who perform exorcisms should have several years of training in their own defense, in the traditions of their particular belief system, and they probably should have assistance while they're doing it, because it's an incredibly demanding thing, psychologically, emotionally, energetically, and spiritually. That said, I do believe that people can perform exorcisms outside of the strict Catholic ceremony. I think that different belief systems have different approaches. Actually, I've been doing a survey in different religious traditions and their exorcism approaches. So there are types of exorcism in Judaism and in Islamic beliefs. Exorcism is practiced over in like Indonesia. There's Buddhist, there's Hindu techniques. And it's interesting to me, many of the things that they have in common, as well as the way that they diverge. So my strongest suggestions to people, if you're curious about it, read and research before ever attempting. Mm-hmm. If at all possible, get a mentor who has experience, who can teach you and guide you. Mm-hmm. And don't just willy-nilly toss yourself into doing exorcisms. I would recommend working with that mentor. Sit in on one. Mm-hmm. I have done so, and they are never what you would expect.
Yeah, I would not want to go just jump into something
That's
like that.
That's something I'm not...
No. Nope.
And that's a sort of situation that I don't recommend a person seek out unless they really feel that they have a calling and they have time and the effort into honing their skills long before they're actually put on the front lines. And maybe you should think of it like that. You don't pick up a gun and decide that you're a police officer.
Right.
Like,
yeah, no, you don't.
You get a criminology degree, you spend time as a rookie, you have somebody shadowing you, like that's not something that you just like jump into and you're gonna come out unscathed if you do.
Right, yeah, exactly. That could turn out really bad. Let's see. Okay. If you had a chance to make your own Ouija board, what kind of differences would you like to have on it stand apart from others?
So I did years ago hand burn a spirit board for myself.
Oh.
And the first thing I put on there that's different, and I will be making a different one after this. Like my wood burning skills are not ideal, but the first thing is to just have a spot in the middle of it that is sort of like the reset button, like to bring things back to be like we're no longer talking to you, or like it's a new face, it's a new spirit. I don't know if this is just how things end up working with the spirits that I end up in communication with or not, but my ideal board would not merely be in English. Mm-hmm. I've had things communicate in a number of different languages, and sometimes people to know kind of like where they're coming from, what time period. Now, all of that kind of goes along with more than what is on the board. My biggest changes are how people use them. Mm-hmm. I have a very strict setup for making use of a spirit board, and that goes like this. a minimum of 3 people sit on the board and are the ones who are placing their fingers on the planchette. The person who is involved and has a vested interest in the questions and answers sits off of the board and does not touch anything. Mm-hmm. And you have an additional person whose only purpose is to record everything. In the best situation, the people sitting on the board are blindfolded or in such low light that they can't see what they're looking at, that they can't see the letters, and therefore are not going to be tainted or missing. And then the other thing is it should be done in a space where you've essentially set up protections. If you're pagan, that means casting a circle, or at least warding the room so that only what you are inviting comes in. So my use of spirit boards ends up being a pretty involved situation. We don't use it frequently, but that setup where the people on the board are not involved in the questions and have no vested interest in the answers, the person asking is outside of it, and you've set up space for protection, and you have a very clear point of inviting communication and a very clear point of ending communication. That is the safest, in my opinion, setup that you can have, and also the most foolproof, of even just accidentally pushing it, because sometimes people will do so unconsciously, even if they're not trying to actually fake stuff.
Yeah. I mean,
so true.
Let's see.
That's an interesting way of doing it. I've never thought about it that way.
It makes sense.
I spent a lot of time with it. So it's, like everybody else, when I was like in middle school, we would do sleepovers and play like light as a feather, stiff as a board, pull out like one of those old Milton Bradley Ouija boards. And what frustrated me was seeing how easily the Ouija board was basically like tricked. I was less concerned about bringing things through as a portal and more that it was so easy and so obvious that people would just get themselves wound up, and it wasn't that they were talking to spirits anymore. They were talking to their own their unconscious like concerns and fears and worries.
Yeah.
And so like I kind of started this to make it as like, I don't know, scientific is not a word that I'd want to apply to Ouija boards, but like as scientific as you can make it, to rule out as much accidental influence and as much fakery, and make it as safe as possible. I mean, all of that obviously says that I don't think that Ouija boards by themselves are evil. I don't think that they are automatic portals to the demonic. I think, like every other thing, they are a tool, and it's how you use it that makes it safe or dangerous.
Another question?
You got one there? Because I've got a few to scroll through here. Because people
Darren wants to know what your views on Scrying Mirrors?
Scrying
Mirrors?
Yeah. Another useful tool. Something that trying to think of where to start with that. Especially because I just finished So a cool thing that turned up in the research for doing work on the Dictionary of Demons is in the 14th, 15th, and 16th centuries, there were people who very legitimately, like, they were practicing these invocation and these summoning techniques. They literally were making circles and things and trying to call spirits up. One of the most famous folks doing this was Dr. John Dee, who was, depending on which resource you're reading, was either the master spy of Queen Elizabeth, but also her court magician. And he would use what was called a show stone, really. They spelled it S-H-E-W, but they just mean show, like a stone that shows things, which is a Elizabethan England way of saying scrying mirror, or actually scrying crystal. Mm-hmm. What's interesting with that is they didn't literally think, in most of the cases, that the spirits they were summoning were going to physically manifest in the room. Where they were manifesting was in the scrying mirror, was in the crystal. So they would see these images, and that's how the spirits would manifest to them. That's how they would communicate. So this tradition of scrying mirrors, which is way older than Elizabethan England. Like, I've got a recreation of a scrying mirror that was found buried under a British cottage that goes back to the Roman occupation of Britain. That just by the stuff that was, put on the back of it, we know people were using it to communicate with spirits. So scrying mirrors can be used for a number of things. You can use it in a kind of psychological way of letting you see your own unconscious mind, kind of like wide awake dreaming, where really all it's doing is letting you communicate with yourself by projecting outside of yourself to this mirror that you're looking at. But it also has the potential to be a doorway that you open that you can easily shut for spirits to manifest and communicate with you. As with every tool like that, it comes with all of the usual warnings of, don't do it if you aren't confident in your ability to shut it back down. Mm-hmm. Don't do it if you aren't confident in your ability to protect yourself or solve the problem if something goes wrong. Don't do it if you are someone who's prone to hallucinations, or other sort of like mental problems that you have a hard time navigating what's real and what's not, because the parts of your brain that works with will make it even more challenging for someone who has those issues.
Oh, we got another one. Oh, okay. This is kind of an interesting one. I haven't seen this one pop up in chat before, but they want to know if a pregnant woman goes on an investigation and gets possessed, would the fetus get possessed as well?
Huh. Okay. Well, it's a legitimate question.
Yeah,
it is.
I've just never had that one pop up before.
So I suppose it depends on when do you think a soul is in the body and how early? Because what I would question is not to scare anybody, but if we want to go there, who's to say that she wouldn't get possessed but maybe carry the spirit in her baby?
Yeah. That is a possibility. I mean, you don't know.
So I guess the core of this question is probably, is it safe for a pregnant woman to go to an investigation? And I think yes, but I do think that we should consider what we are exposing children to. And more than the spirits, I would think maybe just the energy of the place. If you're going someplace really negative, if you're the kind of mother who will make a point of not smoking and make a point of not drinking while you are pregnant, also consider the other things that you will be exposing the unborn baby to.
Right.
Possession aside. So should that stop you from going places that are haunted? Not necessarily. I actually just worked with a friend who's a witch, an investigator, who had a baby recently, and what she would do before going to some of the places that she knew had energy that she didn't want the child to be exposed to was she would do a protective thing on the baby. Like she would, how we ground center shield, we go into places where we have protection up. She made sure to do extra protections on the infant inside of her so that she wouldn't run the risk of causing any kind of harm or make him uncomfortable. And she also paid very close attention that if he seemed uncomfortable, if he kicked a lot, and if he moved around a lot and seemed like he didn't like what was going on, she would remove herself from the space.
That is a good point. Let's see here. Going off of that, I just wanted to touch, when you were on that, the special, the Salem Live, I loved that special, but I really wanted to see more of what you were doing when you were doing your different like spells and things.
Oh, I know. Like, there was the camera on us at all times, and like when I finally saw what they actually showed, I'm like, but, and you cut right before it got interesting, like that the scrying thing.
Yeah,
with Jack,
yes. So tell me how that went.
Hooked. I was so proud. He had so much stuff come through. It was fantastic.
Yes. I know. I was like, I was so excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to see some of this stuff. And then I'm like, what happened? Yes.
It was a little bit like, I don't know, like being at a party where like there's people walking around with hors d'oeuvres, and as soon as you grab the one that you like, they just walk off and they never come.
Yeah. No, but that was actually pretty interesting. And then how you guys had them reenact and everything. That was pretty dang cool. I did thoroughly enjoy it. I just wanted to see a little bit more of that action, though, to see like how you did things, and I know you do like retreats and things, right?
Yeah. I own a 150-year-old home in Oberlin, Ohio.
Okay.
And it's the coziest haunting. I mean, I suppose I should have said, well, my favorite haunting is the haunted house I own.
Yeah.
We bought it because it's clearly got intelligent spirits, but they're the kind of spirits that you could even bring like a psychic kid to, and you wouldn't worry about what would happen to them because they're just residents who love the house so much that they never moved out, even though they died. And so it's got, and it was passed down among like the same family for many, many generations. And most of the folks who are haunting it died on the property, not in any kind of like bad way, like they died of old age. Some 80s, 90s, like they lived their whole lives there. And yeah, one of the main reasons I own it is to give people a chance to be in a haunted location that is as safe as something like that can be, where the history is known, where they've got somebody to sort of like shepherd the experience, and give them the feedback, the validation of, yes, you are picking up something. Yes, that's right. Yes, other people have perceived that as well. Or, the occasional, like, I don't know what's going on, but everyone perceives things differently, so I can't rule it out.
Right. Yeah, I did read about that, and that sounded pretty cool, so I wanted to bring that up so people can check that out, and it's on your website, correct? Yeah,
we call it Inspiration House. And Oberlin, Ohio. I've got a retreat coming up later in this month. It's available through Airbnb as well. So if people don't want me to come with the house and they just want to book an investigation and like a sleepover, it's fairly expensive. Like, don't quote me, but I know it's under $150.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow, very nice. Okay, sweet. Let's go to Ohio.
Hey, there's another chance. We'll have to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
It's a lovely little town too. It's got this like the oldest music conservatory in the States. A huge history of Underground Railroad stuff.
Oh, wow.
It's within walking distance of like all these little shops, and my favorite, which is the Ginkgo Gallery, which is an art gallery in the front and a kitten rescue in the back.
Oh, wow. Oh my God.
So like all the college students that go to Oberlin can like go in and have kitten time with the little faucet they have back.
Oh my gosh, that'd be great. Well, let's see. We got a few more questions here. Yeah. Find it. I know I saw one. Oh, this is one that Darren kind of has a tally going on for each show here.
Okay.
What's the one object in the world you never want to be haunted?
I have the dirty mind of a 14-year-old boy, and let me think of something else. A garbage disposal. A haunted garbage disposal would be the worst thing ever, because you'd never know if it was going to go on when you put your hand in to clean it.
That is true.
Which one? Yeah, that's true. Yeah, oh my gosh. That would not be fun. That's like a phobia of mine, actually. Like, I'm always afraid. You never know if it's going to turn on.
Haunted gun. I mean, God, I can think of a bunch of things I wouldn't want to be haunted.
Mm-hmm.
I threatened somebody I really didn't like to bind them to a well-used butt plug, so
That's a good one. That's great. Oh, let's see here. Let's see. I know there was another one in here somewhere that I think I missed a couple. Do you believe in holy water, or do you think it's just water? There's a question in there.
I believe in holy water the same way I believe in using sage. I believe that there's some basis in why those things are chosen, but to me, most of the power comes from the intent and the faith of the people who are using it. So if holy water doesn't mean shit to you and you use it, then it's not going to do anything.
Right.
In the same way that if you grab some sage and wave it around and that doesn't have any meaning for you, that's not going to do much of anything other than make the room smell sort of like pot.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's my views too. I mean, that question's been brought up a lot, and I think a lot of people have that same kind of aspect to it. I mean, it's not going to do you any good if you don't believe in it.
Might as well just do the pot and really feel good.
I mean, there's like some homeopathic things that you could kind of argue about, like sage particularly has some antiseptic qualities and antibacterial qualities. It's why I said, like, I can see why some of the ideas come about. Like, our European ancestors didn't use sage, but they used a lot of frankincense and styrax benzoin when they would fumigate, and we know frankincense also has antibacterial qualities.
Yep.
So there's some science that's going on behind that stuff that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with ghosts, but can help to, like, purify the air and clear out a space. I have the ritual, the Catholic ritual for holy water, and it's interesting because you go, exorcizo te, you exercise the salt, you add salt to the water, you exercise the water, and the combination of those, salt added to water and the prayers over it, is what makes it holy. And I've always wondered, again, like, salt is something that you use to preserve things. Salt added to water would make it something that is less likely to have bacteria and things grow into it. So again, I end up asking the question of, like, do we have the tradition because there was something else going on with it? In the same way that, like, some of the kosher laws in Leviticus, where you're not supposed to eat pig, or shellfish is probably the easiest one. You are a mostly landlocked country in a desert area, and it's hot all the time. Of course you don't want to eat shellfish.
Right,
because you're going to have the wrath of God.
yeah, you would. Oh, gosh, yeah. No. No way. Let's see here. Are we going to be seeing you on TV anytime soon?
Yes, I know that I am on season 2 for Portals to Hell. I'm not sure when the new season starts. I have some thought that it might be January, but don't quote me on that.
Okay.
I know we are still filming season 2.
Okay.
There were some rumbles from other Travel Channel stuff that if they need someone with my expertise, you might see me on a couple of other shows as well.
Okay.
And that's directly tied to having gotten to meet some really cool people for Haunted Salem Live.
Oh, perfect.
And folks that, like, I hadn't had a lot of people know me in the TV land as just Psychic Michelle, and they didn't realize, like, there's this whole, like, degree and all the occult stuff and, like, the levels of the different types of things that you can, ring me up and say, hey, we've got these weird symbols on the wall. What do they mean?
Right. I mean, yeah. I mean, you do it all. It's insane, and that'll be exciting. So I'll have to keep my eyes out for that.
Definitely.
So everybody stay tuned. Be watching Travel Channel. Let's see here. Just making sure there's no other questions before I got
a question here before we...
Okay.
you got all these new teams coming out and stuff. What kind of advice would you give them to keep safe on an investigation?
First, read up on how to protect yourself. Like, there's a lot of different psychic self-defense stuff out there. And even if you don't believe in, like, the religious approach, the spiritual approach, or the psychic approach, grounding, centering, and shielding is also just good, like, psychology. It's a good exercise to maintain healthy emotional boundaries as you go into a space. And in a lot of ways, your emotions are, the first chink in your armor if you're really afraid. Mm-hmm. So the thing that I recommend everybody to have in their toolkit as far as protection goes is just the simple, before you go in, take a few moments, breathe, find your center, like whatever you want to define that as. Mm-hmm. And then from that, get a really good sense of like where you end and the rest of the world begins. And imagine that you have a barrier that you control that keeps things out, that can be asserted, especially if you feel like something bad is happening. When you're in the location, first rule, if you really feel like something bad is happening, remove yourself from the place where you first experienced it. If you just walked into a room and suddenly you feel sick to your stomach, you have a headache, you feel like you're passing out, get out of that room first. Because it's probably something in that room. Mm-hmm. And if you still feel like crap, remove yourself from the building and assess. Mm-hmm. Don't automatically assume that it's always paranormal. You may be having an allergic reaction. Some of these places are old. A lot of them are old locations. Mm-hmm. There's all kinds of mold, mildew, whatever. I recommend, especially if, like me, you're asthmatic, wear some breathing apparatus. Just get even if it's just, one of those little biker things that you have over your mouth that you breathe through, something to protect yourself, because I've caught people thinking that they were under attack and all they were doing was having an allergy attack because it was black mold.
Oh, yeah.
So have practical things to protect yourself that then allow you to better assess, is this supernatural? Is this a paranormal experience that I'm having? Or am I having a reaction physically to the location? Either way, remove yourself from the space that feels bad, and then assess. Why does it feel bad? What just happened? And also, you can't put somebody else out if you yourself are on fire. Mm-hmm. So if your whole team is having a problem, and you are also having a problem, fix yourself first before you try to help anybody else.
All right, let's see here. Just double checking here.
Let's see.
We did have a question, but I'm pretty sure we already answered that one from Cora.
Well, let her ask it again, since she might have missed it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. Yeah, I think she had to go back to work for a little bit. Cora wanted to know what you prefer to use on an investigation.
Just me. Yeah, no, just me. Like, if I have my preference, I like just using my own senses. I get really easily distracted with technology, partly because it never works right for me. I have nothing against using it. It's just not my preferred method.
Okay, let's see here. I think that's all we had in there. Kim, did you have any other questions you wanted to ask before
I've asked all mine.
What was that?
I'm open to whatever.
Oh, let's see here. I know I had just started reading. I haven't gotten too far yet, but I was reading your Psychic Energy Codex. Awakening Your Subtle Sensories, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought that was interesting because, I never thought of that, about keeping a journal. I think that's a very good idea to keep a journal of your experiences. I think I need to try to do that more. And so that was very interesting to me, so I can't wait to finish the book. But I I'm kind of coming into some of those things where I may have like a vision or something, but I can't always remember everything after I have it.
Yeah,
So,
no, and writing stuff down. My grandmother was the one that encouraged me to start doing that. She had prophetic dreams most of her life, and I occasionally as well. And when I was, 7th grade, I think I had a pretty significant one, and the first suggestion she made was write it down before the thing happens, and that way you don't accidentally like edit it or change it or try to switch it to fit, even unconsciously. And not only does it keep you honest, it also gives you validation when it does happen, and you can point in that journal. Definitely, I had definitely this happened. Definitely, I foresaw this. I can see all of the points. The validation is huge. Having some way of getting feedback external to yourself to confirm that the experience you're having, the perception you're having, is accurate on some level, gives you the confidence to trust those impressions more. And the further along you get with that, the more you'll probably realize that you've been having these impressions your whole life. You just were discounting them.
Right.
So yeah, no, it's journaling is powerful. If you're not the kind of person who's really good at like sitting down and writing something down, consider talking into your computer, talk to text on your phone, a video log, anything as long as you have a record that you can go back over.
Yeah, I think I need to start doing that. I think that would help out a lot. And I was just reading that. That's where I'm at kind of in the book. And I was just like, that makes a lot of sense. So let's see here. I'm just going to check real quick, make sure I'm not missing any questions in here. Then usually I kind of give a little shout out to everybody that's in there before we start wrapping things up. I think we're good on questions. Anybody have any last questions for Michelle? I think we're good here. So I'm just going to kind of give a quick shout out to everybody who was in chat tonight. We had Terry, we had Darren, Natalie, we had Cora, we had Lewis, we had myself, we had Cynthia. Let's see. Oh, I got kicked out. Gotta love technology sometimes. I always get kicked out of there. Shay, we had Matt, we had Angie, we had Christopher in here. Kim was in here.
We had a Brandy in there.
Oh yeah, there was a Brandy at one point. I do remember seeing that. Yep, she is. All right, so thank you everybody who was in chat, participated in chat tonight. We had an awesome chat tonight, so thank you for that. Thank you for everybody who was listening that wasn't into chat tonight. I'd like to thank Michelle for being on the show tonight. It was amazing. We had several people in there saying they were fangirling, so I'm not the only one who's fangirling tonight. I've been super excited for this, and then when I got sick yesterday, I'm like, oh, I have to be better. I have to be better. So I do appreciate you for being on. Any last thing if that you want to say, like where they can find you on social media or your websites? Any kind of plugs you want to give out?
Okay, well, michellebelanger.com is the main website. You can probably Google Inspiration House for the place that we rent out and run classes from. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube as Seth Anakim, SETHANIKEEM. It's the same one for all of them, so if you find it on one, you can find it on all of them. I'm most active on Twitter. And as a birthday present to myself, I know this might seem weird, I put out another book just for funsies, and it is a collection mostly of all of the articles I wrote for the Paranormal Insider, which was the blog that went along with Paranormal State. And it's called Wide World of Weird, because it's all like these single-serving bits about the Bentwaters UFOs and the Hopkinsville Goblins, Christopher Columbus's UFO sighting, the Dyatlov Pass mystery, like Yetis and missing people and Fortean events and ghosts and hauntings and psychic stuff, and just all the weird. Over 100 different articles. So that's out on Kindle and in physical book.
perfect. We have one last question here from somebody who joined late.
Okay.
They would like to know, do you notice if the moon phases have anything to do with how intense the spiritual energies are coming in for you? Like, are full moon energies more conducive to spirit communication?
It doesn't have that impact on me, but I know that it has an impact on other people. So what I recommend is pay attention to your own cycles. I found journals to be really useful. My cycles tend to be more seasonal than they are lunar.
Mm-hmm.
So I am really intensely on the dark side of the year, which, for us in the States is pretty much middle of September, late September, October, November, December, and now, this is the time when things are most intense for me.
All right. So hopefully, I think. All right. So, again, thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight. And thank you again, Michelle, for being on.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. And next week, we have Amanda on from Spooky. So stay tuned for that show next Thursday. And everyone have a good night. And then if you just want to hang on one sec.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to REP Paranormal and Friends. Be sure to check out Kim and Allison on Facebook at REP Paranormal Busters.